Good morning, everyone. We'll get started here in just a minute. There we go. We're no longer sharing, so I'm going to stop my video. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to wish you all a very good morning. My name is Brent Miller, Managing Director with SVN, Miller Commercial Real Estate. Our mission is creating amazing value with our clients, colleagues, and communities throughout the Delmarva Peninsula. And this is just one way of doing that. I'd like to also introduce my co-host, Wesley Cox. Wes is a top producing senior advisor with the Hannah team here at SVN. Wes and I and the entire SVN team would like to welcome you to our 11th annual Commercial Real Estate Forum. Our normal venue for this forum is normally held at Salisbury University in early spring. However, due to the current environment, we have pivoted. I know you've heard that word a lot, but had to throw that one in there. We've created a virtual commercial real estate forum series that will be held at 10 a.m. on Wednesday mornings over the next couple of months as we transition through this recovery. We've invited several local, regional, and national dynamic speakers that will enlighten you on the economic forecasts, best practices, trends, and opportunities on shifting gears in this changing commercial real estate market. As you can see, that has been our theme from the beginning, even before COVID-19, and it fits even better in today's market and world. In order to make this forum more interactive as possible, we want to welcome you and encourage you to ask questions. Please type in your questions in the chat box below, and we will ask them to our keynote speaker throughout the presentation. Q&A box. Wes says it's the Q&A box, not the chat box. So now I'd like to have one of our sponsors, Daniel Mills, VP of Business Development with Delmarva Veteran Builders, to introduce our keynote speaker. Daniel?
Thank you, Brent. It is an honor to introduce Mayor Jake Day as today's speaker. I can tell you one of the hardest things to do is introducing someone that everybody already knows. There really isn't much that I can tell you that you guys don't know. With that being said, during his 5 years as mayor, we've seen a historic rise in economic development. In my opinion, Mayor Day recognizes the potential for Salisbury, and through his positive outlook and infectious energy, he has driven Salisbury to become nationally recognized. 2018, Mayor Day, Mike Dunn, Chris Eccleston, and myself had the opportunity to tour the Northern Liberty District in Philadelphia with one of the developers that led that historic revitalization of that area. This developer's worked with countless elected officials and mayors. And as we were wrapping up the tour and we're getting ready to leave, he noted to me, Salisbury is extremely lucky. It has one of the most overqualified mayors in the country. Now, I will say there's probably only been one bad decision that I've seen the mayor make, and that is join the Army instead of the Air Force. As an Air Force guy, I could tell you, if he would have joined the Air Force, he would have been able to fly one of those beautiful jets over my shoulder there. And I tell you, he'd have a heck of a lot more fun career flying those planes and marching around all the time. With that being said, it is an honor to introduce Mayor Day.
Good morning. I think I am unmuted officially. There we go. Good morning, everyone. I want to say, first of all, Brent and Wes, thank you for your leadership. Thank you to the entire SVN Miller Commercial Real Estate team, and to Amber for helping to make this technically possible, without whom you wouldn't see any of us this morning. So Daniel, I was getting ready to say what an honor it is to be introduced by one of my brothers in service. And then you had to remind me that I chose the lesser profession. Thanks. But I do want to take a quick second and just recall or recount that experience in Philadelphia. Anytime you occupy or walk a place that has been done well, you can't even possibly count or take notes and list all of the things that are going to impact you later. I find myself frequently thinking back to that trip and moments that we had as we walked around with the developer and great things that I want incorporated in projects here in Salisbury. So Daniel, thank you for reminding me of that. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for your service, my friend. And also, one other thing I want to say real quick about Delmarva Veteran Builders. I think most people are familiar with the company, but what you may not know is that these individuals who work as part of that team have not only served and continue to serve their nation and their community, but right now they are working to serve each of us and small businesses and creative entrepreneurs in our community through the Believe Marketplace, which is a pop-up marketplace that's been established downtown next to the Believe mural on the Delmarva Veteran Builders headquarters. So thank you all for that, and congratulations on that excellent work. If everyone will give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen. All right. Can I just get a nod? Can everyone see that? Is it showing up? We're seeing the Salisbury logo? All right, good. Okay. All right, well, friends, this marks the 4th year that I have joined you, I believe, at this summit. It's a little different today, obviously, and it's going to be a little different talk. What I hope you'll still gather is where my personal outlook from my vantage point is with regard to where we're headed. So today's May 20th, 2020. Since the first case of coronavirus was known in the United States on January 22nd, 2020, it has grown exponentially in our cities, towns, and villages across every state and territory, infecting more than 1.56 million people in this country alone, killing 92,258 Americans. On the Delmarva Peninsula, 7,787 people have been infected. 4,969 of those are in the Salisbury metropolitan area alone. Right here in Wycomico County, 839 as of yesterday of our 103,000 citizens have become sick, and 21 of them are dead. It's the solemn obligation of elected leaders to preserve life, protect health and safety of one's fellow citizens. Now, I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here. So what virus are we protecting from? What syndrome are we protecting from? The first wave of this virus presents with symptoms of fever and cough. The second wave of this virus presents with symptoms and syndrome of distancing and elbow bumps. The third wave of this syndrome presents with symptoms of increased social media usage, decreased stooping and propping on bar stools. And the fourth wave of this virus presents with canceled projects, closed store signs, and knee-high weeds. Outbreaks of COVID-19 in New York and Miami, Seattle, and New Orleans have garnered significant national attention, international attention even. Discussions of outbreaks reference the areas in which they have occurred by the name of the principal city. But for all of New York City's attention, the concentration of the outbreak is in suburban Westchester County. For all of San Francisco's attention, the concentration of cases are in its suburb, Santa Clara County. Even Salisbury has received attention from regional, national, and international press. Yet, 2/3 of Salisbury, Maryland's cases are in the small town of Georgetown, Delaware. This is not an issue of the future of our cities. This is not a question of density. As you can see by the diagrams that I'm showing, the density appears on the left side of the screen. The cases per square mile appears on the right. Places like Albany, Georgia, Pittsfield, Massachusetts, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. I've read articles over the last week about college towns that are at risk of never coming back. I've read articles about resort towns that aren't ever coming back. And I've read articles about cities that aren't ever coming back. But let's please remember that every crisis in history has raised similar calls, and everyone has proven false. I've read that it's a good time for Blackboard or Zoom, but a bad time for the sandwich shop on the corner. And I'm not saying that's wrong. We are not gathering, at least not in Maryland, in numbers larger than 10. And this is certainly not reminiscent of our better days. We, however, are finding new ways to connect, mostly through social media. And yes, that's a vehicle that doesn't always illuminate our better angels. But what does this mean for what I've been saying for each of the last 4 years that I've been here? For 4 years, I've spoken about, to this gathering, about the value of the center, that getting our physical center right matters, that we must gather and densify and interact and diversify right in the middle of our communities if we love them and want them to strengthen. I've told you that not only because the evidence suggests it and that it makes it a healthy place, but because selfishly it makes my job easier. Like the folds of a brain densifying as a child grows, the density of neurons and synapses, complexity increases. Complexity of thought, ideas, capabilities. New and more complex things form. New ideas, relationships exponentially increase. The same is true in our cities. The multiplier effect grows. And I can look down from upon high, 37 feet above, the city streets in my $48 Staples chair and cheer victory. But does it mean we have to change course? Return to development patterns that spread us apart? I don't think so. The fundamentals haven't changed, and they won't. The buildings haven't caused the problem. Development hasn't caused the problem. Technology allowed us to spread out, first through the car, now through the internet. But it hasn't necessarily made all things better for us. The car helped us in incomparable ways. It sped up life. It remapped the world, but it also did serious environmental and social damage. The internet sped up life. It remapped our minds, but it has done tremendous social damage too. This much I know, however, no society will ever be able to long afford the budget imbalance created by sprawling further apart. Each foot that we spread further apart, building things that can never possibly be paid for by the limited development that they support, slowly sucks money from our profit margins. It draws from our quality of life, our time, and our tax coffers. But in the time of pandemic, cities are physical manifestations of policy. So shouldn't they change? And the answer is absolutely. As always in this country, some are suffering more than others. The elderly, the immunodeficient, the sick are particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. But so are those who were at an economic and social disadvantage before the crisis started. When we pull out of our community, we don't have to drive far to see the continued blight of places that didn't recover from the soaring rate of foreclosures in 2007. So what can we do better? There are two things we know. This image and images like it will come back. The U.S. economy will recover. And the recovery will start in the places and be strongest in the cities that were thriving before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, these great cities and regions were already facing a crisis of crushing housing cost burdens brought about by decades of underbuilding, the lack of affordable and available housing options, even when jobs grew. Coming out of the last recession meant that higher income entrants to the market outbid everyone else, with limited options, exacerbating inequality. So let's be intentional. Let's be the buffalo. We must build. We must continue to be seen as socially welcoming. We must continue to be affordable. We must continue to be innovative. We must be increasingly diverse. We've got a diverse economy. I'm proud of it. Agriculture in the Salisbury metropolitan statistical area represents 1.5 of our $25 billion economy. Tourism represents $1.8 billion of our $25 billion economy. What I think many people forget is that the university is a hub of economic growth and represents over $1 billion into our economy. Manufacturing represents $2.8 billion, more than tourism, to the Salisbury metropolitan area economy. Retail, $2.5 billion. Finance, insurance, and real estate, $10.5 billion of our $25 billion economy. And look, I'm proud of our economic diversity, but I want to take a second and focus on this image. Universities are so critical. They're essential, and they can be the lifeblood of an economy. They can be essentially the turbocharger on our economy. And I don't believe that, in spite of the challenge of having a university in our city, where students in many cases aren't paying right now for their rent, the university is losing revenue, property owners are losing revenue, retailers are losing revenue, food service establishments, especially alcohol service establishments, are suffering as a result. But as they return and continue to pump out bright young minds, I believe it bodes well for our long-term success. The personalities and the expressions and the emotions of the battle-tested leaders in decision-making positions in Salisbury around the table, or on the Zoom storyboard, as it were, in this crisis, tell you very much, I think, about how they see our recovery going. When I look into the eyes of Dave Ryan, and he is not a person who I think intends to be read, but I try. And when I look at Bill Chambers and Mike Dunn and many of our business owners and operators, in many I see worry. What decision needs to be made next? Who will need a grant? Who needs working capital? Who needs loan deferment? How can we help? But I also see tremendous confidence. I see confidence in the underlying truth that we didn't misstep. We didn't miscalculate. We didn't bet on the wrong strategies. We didn't slowly lose ground to the competition. We were at full gallop, and we couldn't even hear the next foal behind us. We've been forced into caution to trot the next lap, but that should only be enough to let us catch our breath before taking off once more. So let me tell you how we're positioning ourselves for recovery and return and what will make us strong. First and foremost is communication. We have been hosting since day one, and actually I should say hosting has been done by SVN Miller Commercial Real Estate, who invited us in when we met in person and has been our broadcasting partner since. A group that we've since named the Salisbury Area Coronavirus Recovery Task Force. This is any business in Salisbury, as well as the institutions that are working on addressing the imbalance and significant effects on certain industries of the COVID-19 crisis. In addition, we've convened a weekly call of the Delmarva Coronavirus Recovery Task Force. That's a group of elected officials from across the entire peninsula who are working together in collaboration to ensure that best practices are shared and that our whole peninsula rises together. Additionally, this week we announced $87,000 to M4 Reactor. M4 Reactor is the community makerspace in Salisbury that was set to open the first week in March and was not able to open thanks to the coronavirus. M4 Reactor, however, is now going to be making, at the city's expense, acrylic barriers to help businesses reopen. Additionally, the city is giving out, thanks to the United States Conference of Mayors and Bella and Canvas, a t-shirt manufacturer, 5,000 masks to consumers in Salisbury so that they can get back into stores, businesses, and help the economy restart. We are partnering with our fellow municipalities in Wicomico County and the Wicomico County government on planning for the distribution of $18.1 million to our local businesses to help restart the economy. 9 million of that is for health impacts. 9 million of that is directly for business development or assisting businesses with losses. Additionally, last week we announced our roadmap to recovery. This is a guide for each industry in Salisbury and Wicomico County, published jointly by Wicomico County and the city of Salisbury, to help them see pathways to opening safely and to reopening sooner. We noticed that when the retail establishments were allowed to open this week, many didn't. And no doubt, part of that is corporate headquarters, home offices, making the decision that there was a lot to think through, multiple jurisdictions to manage, and wanting to ensure that they are planning and thinking safely for their consumers and their workers. Also this week, we announced our next step plan. This includes facets of relief for various groups, particularly low-income folks, vulnerable populations, and small businesses. One aspect of this, and I'm going to point you to our website, salisbury.md/nextstep, and then you can navigate to this particular page. This is a restaurant reopening application for outdoor dining. We're making all public property around restaurants and also allowing any private property around restaurants to become temporary outdoor dining areas. We're approving those applications now. I'm copied on the application so I can see when they come in. And I've been proud to see our restaurants already flooding the inbox under the promised 24-hour turnaround. So no surprise that people are on top of their game in the restaurant industry and ready to reopen and do so safely. Additionally, in our parking district in downtown, after hearing from restaurants that by not enforcing parking for the last 2 months, we had seen people occupying on-street parking spaces, and it had become difficult for restaurants to get delivery drivers close and carry-out consumers close. So we put up signs and put temporary restrictions on parking in front of restaurants throughout downtown that provides for carry-out and delivery drivers spaces in front of those restaurants. Every restaurant in downtown received one. And then lastly, we provided relief for taxpayers and ratepayers, allowing for 6-month deferments, and actually this says 6-month payment plans, 6-month deferments and 12-month payment plans for water and sewer ratepayers, personal property taxpayers, and real estate property taxpayers. Additionally, we've tried other fun ways to support our restaurants with takeout bingo. We're now in round 2 of Takeout Bingo, and there is a round 3 out there as well. I think it's just pizza and subs, or pizza and burgers, but trying to find ways to support our restaurants. Additionally, and you're not going to be surprised to hear this, we have taken this opportunity to continue construction with expedited schedules throughout the city on infrastructure projects. As I have said many times, that rolling out the red carpet is critical to ensuring that people want to continue to invest in our community. The Riverside Circle project reopens or opens in June. Scheduled to open the first week of June, though we believe it'll be open to traffic the last week of May after base paving. This project it was a 5-month project, and we're very proud of the speed at which our contractors have accomplished that. Additionally, Main Street continues to work. This was designed in 2008 for anyone who's not aware. This is a 4-year construction project, December 2016 through December 2020. So 5 of the 6 blocks are complete, and the last block is under construction now, and you're looking at it. Very fascinating, I think, to compare the historical pictures of the plaza in downtown. Additionally, worth noting that this project is currently ahead of schedule and is planned to be done before its planned construction deadline of December 31st, 2020. And this is what the very same street looks like half a block away. Additionally, we continue improvements in our neighborhoods. Waterside Park is receiving a new football field and improvements including signage and the split rail fencing you see here, as well as a relocated community garden and a parking lot. Our town square, we're pretty excited about this. We recently learned that we received another $1 million grant from the state of Maryland, thanks to Governor Hogan putting a line item in the capital budget. It passed and was not cut, thankfully. And that $1 million will help us complete the town square construction project. So design is ongoing on phase 2, which is everything from the curb line. I wonder if my cursor shows up here. Everything from the curb line at Division Street and the parking garage over to the facade of the new buildings being built on Lot 1. Just an image of the splash pad that inspired us from Greensboro, North Carolina, to add a splash pad to our new town square. The Urban Greenway project received really good news this past week. All federal and state permits were issued and signed for the Camden Street pedestrian bridge. And any of you who have lived here for more than 30 years remember Camden Avenue used to run right into downtown as Camden Street Bridge, and now there's a missing link, but it will return here this summer as a 12-foot wide, I believe it's 12-foot wide, pedestrian and bicycle bridge as part of the Urban Greenway. The next phase of that construction will be the Carroll Street and Market Street projects. Additionally, we received further funding for the construction and design of the rail trail, and we continue to work on acquiring property and rights of way for the rail trail from Del Mar to Fruitland. The Vision Zero projects continue around town. We have a variety of new small improvements to slow down traffic. City Council received an update Monday night on the Vision Zero plan. And, oh, I don't have a Fitzwater. And I wanted to update everyone on the Fitzwater Street project. Many people, I think, are interested in the fact that that $6 million project is under construction. So the Fitzwater pump station is shifting off of the marina property in order to make way for the marina landing development. Once that construction is off of the marina property, construction can begin on the marina landing property, which I'll talk about again in just a minute here. So I want to share with you what I'm seeing out there in the world as well from a private development standpoint. The villages at Idolet, commercial development as well as multifamily, continue to progress. They had a scheduled ribbon cutting last week, which was obviously postponed since we can't gather and cut a ribbon together. Virtual ribbon cutting is not as fun. The Powell Building, which includes the Main Street Kids business in downtown Salisbury, it continues to progress. I learned the other day that drywall is up. The last time I was in there, it was metal studs and electric and plumbing was going in. So really nice to see that project progress. I believe they're looking at an end of summer opening. I could be wrong, that could be a little earlier, but I believe it's summer 2021 opening. That's 20 to 22 apartments in downtown Salisbury, as well as with features including an indoor ground floor parking garage, gym, and business, 10,000 square foot business called Main Street Kids. The Ross project, a 13-story tower in downtown Salisbury, and now a second 6-story tower in downtown Salisbury, are forthcoming. You've probably seen, this is a dated image. There's now demolition of the majority of these buildings, and the building not shown to the left, which is the old Chamber of Commerce building, now coming down. So that project continues to progress. The City Council next week will see the Ross final development agreement. This is necessary because there is a sky bridge from the development, from the tower into the city parking garage, and a long-term agreement on parking at market rates, but a long-term agreement on parking. And this is a significant project. This winter, November, we expect to see piles being driven, and expect to see vertical construction begin early 2021. Just another image of what that might look like in downtown if you happen to be hovering over Evo. And my understanding is if you drink enough Evo, you'll hover over Evo. Also very excited to see construction continue on the Entrepreneurship Center in downtown Salisbury. Major project with a $5.5 million gift from the Rommel family. Just an incredible asset that I know is going to transform how we feel about our downtown, with students and entrepreneurs starting businesses in the center of the city at a greater and more rapid pace. Artist rendering of the Center for Entrepreneurship. I, to my surprise, stepped into the city center building the other day and realized that this building looks entirely different than I had ever seen it before. A modern building with a new glass elevator under construction, approaching completion. So I encourage folks to take a minute to go step in and see your friends at Roadie Joe's, get some carry out, and check out the new newly renovated city center building. Beautiful marble floors, glass elevator, gorgeous building. The old mall project continues to advance. We are sending soon to City Council our recommendations for resurrecting the TIF on that project, and which, as many may remember, was an approved TIF for this project for public infrastructure. It would be, the TIF would be about half the size of the old one. The development scale is very similar. However, density is slightly decreased from what was originally proposed, but continues to be aggressively pushed forward. Planning Commission approved last week, 2 weeks ago, the housing subdivision on Shoemaker Lane. So that's 54 new homes in the center of Salisbury, less than a quarter mile from the park. The Marina Landing Project land disposition agreement is now complete. And yet, as of yesterday, the soil and riverwalk agreements advanced to the City Department of Infrastructure and Development Department. We are beyond excited to see that project nearing shovel in the ground. Also want to give you a couple updates on other things that we've talked about in the past. You may remember that the city sold 2 pieces of property, parking lot 16 on the Wycomico River, to one developer, and split a small grass parcel called the Salisbury Green to another developer. Well, settlement on the rejoining of those 2 properties into one development is scheduled for Wednesday of next week. We'll be having a ceremony the week following at lot 16. We'll do social distancing signing, and we plan to continue to work with that developer to advance their project, which is now inclusive of a restaurant and 32 apartments on the Riverwalk. Settlement is scheduled for the first week of June on parking lot 30. You may remember this project. I talked about it last year. This has been intermittently designed as either a hotel or multifamily housing on the river, next to the Brew River sign, right on the parking lot at the Wycomico River, Main Street, Lake Street, and Route 50. Also excited to see that project move forward. Major steps forward in the last month at Lot 1. I won't reveal too much other than to say that a financing partner is on board for this project. The city public works agreement is drafted and in review by the developer. The land disposition contract is signed, and we believe that in 2021 we will see buildings being constructed on this property. So what does all this mean? This means that we were on a trend that was record-setting for our community. We had $250 million in construction permitted in the city in 4 years. 2019 was the best year that we had since the year 2000. 2017 was our second best year, and 2018 our third best year. But here's what's more. March 2020, the first month of the COVID-19 crisis, was the best month that we had since 2007, which is the first monthly record that I have. Construction value pace continues to quicken. And we saw an 80% increase in the last 3 years over the previous 6 years of the construction value per month. To put a finer detail on it, let me show you what we've been looking at. So far this year, this fiscal year, we've had $59 million in permitted construction. Last month, March, or a month ago, we had $23 million in the month of March alone, $9 million in the month of April. The only month that we have on record better than that is November 2007. And here is the superlatives that I look at. March 2020 was the best month for construction permitting in the city since 2007. April 2020 was the best April we've had for construction permitting in the city since 2007. In the 2 months of the COVID-19 crisis, we had a combined $33 million in permitted construction in the city. We are currently at the best position at this stage of the fiscal year for construction in any year since 2007. We have 91 new single-family homes approved in the city during the COVID-19 crisis. And here's the most important superlative, I think. Construction permitted in Salisbury during the 9 weeks alone of the COVID-19 crisis exceeds all development in Salisbury for each of the entire year for 5 of the last 10 years. So you've seen this before. This is my call to action. If time had stopped in February 2020, we were on top of our game. If it simply restarted again, there'd be no change. But here's what I know. It's going to take action to keep us there. No one ever lost weight sitting on the couch reminiscing about a time when they were once in shape. A few minutes ago, I told you that in order to restart our momentum, we must continue to be socially welcoming, innovative, diverse. I'm going to do my part on those fronts. And the reason why that matters is it's why we have been attracting young people, the lifeblood of any economy. But here's what I need from you. We must build more. We must seek more. We were dangerously short on housing before. We've got to add more. We were in a crisis of spec industrial space before. Let's add more. We had no warehousing capacity to speak of. Let's make more. I'll help. And while retail was changing before our very eyes, I believe our market is missing attractive and unique brands. We are positioned for a better day for each and every citizen in our community. And with that mindset, we make this city a more lasting place to wisely make an investment. My friends, a year ago today, I told you that we were not in a gold rush, just catching up on unmet demand. And I believe that demand is still there. And now, we've told an already eager economy to hold its horses. And I believe that on the other side of this thing, we're going to have a Triple Crown winner on our hands. Thank you, my friends, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Jake, thanks so much, man. That was a great, thorough presentation. Obviously, a little bit different than what we have been accustomed to at the beautiful Salisbury University. Different for all of us, but really appreciate all the time that you've put into this presentation, because we know that you've been probably one of the very few mayors and leaders around the country that have given and continue to give multiple live updates to the community, which has got to be occupying a tremendous amount of your time, and not just time, but energy and just brain power in general. So thanks for joining us again today for that. We do have some questions that have come in. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one, which is basically kind of a recap of some things that you've already touched on. So if you could maybe just kind of go into like a recap bullet point answer here. The question is, can you give any update on the proposed projects in the downtown Salisbury area that were presented at last year's SVN forum? So we touched on, at least my presentation, we touched on the big parking lot kind of by the new Center Square, obviously the Ross, the one you just touched on across from Avery Hall. So could you just kind of give a quick recap highlighting the stage of where each one of those is?
Yeah. Let me do two things if I can in that recap. Let me start off by saying that what I think people probably generally want to know and need to hear is, what's the outlook on those projects? And so what we've done is we've started on most of those projects an every other week call with the partners. And in fact, in some cases, we've asked and the developers have agreed to include their bank, their lender, equity partners, everybody, so that we have total visibility of what's going on. I think at times, especially times of uncertainty, there can be a lot of speculation about what is happening with a particular project. Somebody doesn't see action on a site, or they don't hear an update. And so one thing we've encouraged also is, hey, the best way to combat that and to communicate what's happening is to communicate what's happening. To the extent that you're comfortable, go talk about it. I think it's totally fair for a developer to show the world a little bit, what happens behind the curtain. As a person who's very interested in real estate development, as spent my academic career and the non-public service part of my career on development, planning, land transactions. I'm fascinated by all those things, and still there's things I don't know. There's still mystery to the development process. Or I should say there's magic to the development process. So exposing a little bit of that and helping people understand what's going on, I think builds confidence. That would be a recommendation I'd make to any developer willing to do that. Now, I understand there are other facets other than public knowledge that need to be addressed, but that's one. So the only projects that I would say have changed course that people should, I don't want to say be concerned about, but that are not on an aggressive track. And I'll address the two of them. Are one, the 500 Riverside project, which was a private piece of property. They have significant approvals, complete, more than some other projects that I talked about today. And still, there is generally a hold on that project through no fault of not anyone's fault. Just market forces need to swing in that project's direction to make things happen. The other is the Lot 10 project. And the primary reason for that one is just that the city is trying to help push through the projects that we are associated with right now that were on city property, city parking lots. And Lot 10 is just the lowest on the list. It's not that it's not important. It is important. It's just last of 6 or so projects that we're working on. So again, not that it's not important. It is, but we have limited capacity, so we're trying to work on that. So the active steps being taken at the Powell building, which is under construction, the Ross, which is in demolition phase of construction, Lot 1, which is in a planning stage, early permitting, but planning stage. They actually have a public works agreement, which is kind of an advanced document, but it's a useful tool for doing making sure that the town square, which is funded, and the building project lines up together, as well as a parking element to that project. There will likely be a new parking garage as a part of that, as the first phase of that project in downtown. We're talking about something that would rival the existing parking garage in size, different in shape, taller and smaller in footprint, and wrapped in housing, but a big project no less. And then Lot 30, again, in a legal development agreement phase still, but making progress. Lot 16, similar, although they are fully in design with their architects. And Marina Landing, which is of those not under construction, is the most advanced. And again, yesterday we got the soil and riverwalk agreements, so that part of the project is advancing. Hopefully that answers that person's question, Wes.
It does, Jake. Thanks. We did have one viewer ask, could you remind us which lot number 10 is?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I use these numbers like everybody should know, right? I'm like,
you know them in your sleep, you're right, but not everybody does. So
let me just do this. Lot 1 is the library parking lot. Lot 10 is the parking lot at Route 13 and Route 50 where the flea market takes place. Lot 30 is where the Brewer River sign is, and Lot 16 is next to Avery Hall's parking lot.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. The same person also asked, can you remind us what Lot 30 is? So you just did a recap of all of them. Thank you for that. It's a good reminder for all of us. Got a question that's come in revolving around your next steps plan. And I'll just read it. It says, is that money coming out of the city budget, or is it coming out of the CARE money, like the tax-free housing for the first responders, relief for renters, etc.? Or is it going to potentially raise real estate tax for city properties?
Well, great question. So the budget, my city budget just passed first reading, and Monday night or Tuesday night, because Monday's Memorial Day, I'm hopeful that it'll pass second reading. And that makes 5 years in a row, the fifth budget, for the city with no real estate property tax increase. So it will not increase property taxes, and I don't see it having any impact because that funding, I don't see any of the things we're doing having an impact on property taxes. We're really proud of the fact that our economic growth has enabled us to grow our economy, grow our revenues, but without increasing property taxes. Specific to that question, is it CARES Act money or money out of the taxpayers' coffers? Neither. It is a grant from CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, for COVID-19. So as part of the, actually, I apologize. I said it's not CARES Act money. It's not part of that $18.1 million allocated to Wycomico County, but it was authorized under the CARES Act or one of its predecessor acts. What it did was it allowed all CDBG entitlement communities to get a second allocation in this fiscal year of our of our CDBG money, which for us is about $225,000. So that money, if you add up the various amounts included in the next step plan, totals the $225,000 that we've received. That money is a federal grant. It's a reimbursement grant. So our partners and the city will front that and be reimbursed it. Debbie Stam, who's worked for the city for many years, manages that, and we don't lose a penny on it. We make sure that every dollar is replaced with the federal dollars.
Great, thanks, Jake, for clarifying that. I think Daniel Mills and I both have the same question, and it's a clarification. When you were talking about the percentages and you were throwing out, billions of dollars here and billions of dollars here between residential and commercial and construction, can you clarify those numbers again? I know what I heard, I think, was real estate and construction accounts for 10.5 billion of our economy's 25 billion economic output. So can you kind of clarify what those numbers are and the percentages?
Yeah, so the Bureau of Economic Analysis takes each MSA, each metropolitan statistical area, and let me back up real quick on that, and I promise I'll be brief. But the MSA is the metropolitan statistical areas in the United States are the economic geography, so the main building blocks of economies of the United States. They are fundamentally CBSAs, core-based statistical areas, and there can be metropolitan ones, combined ones, and micropolitan ones. And actually in a few short years, and this is unusual, but in a few short years, ours has changed and is about to change again. Up until from 1990, when the first definition of metropolitan statistical areas and micropolitan statistical areas, say that 10 times fast, was created through 2013. So for those 23 years, the Salisbury MSA was Wycomico and Somerset counties. And there was what was called the Ocean Pines, which is the largest census designated place, even though it's not an incorporated municipality in Worcester County. That's how they name these things. The Ocean Pines micropolitan statistical area and our MSA were a combined Salisbury Ocean Pines CSA, combined statistical area. And the way they define this is based on commuting patterns and economic dependency. So they take the principal city and they say, based on the census estimates, how many people are commuting into that place for their daily work from a suburban county, from another county, an adjoining county. And that means if it's over 20%, that neighboring county is considered economically dependent upon the principal city. So in the case of us in 2013, the Sussex County commuting patterns, which had been rising and rising and rising, increased to the point as they added more housing, but not adding jobs. As they continued to add housing, those commuting patterns caused the federal government to change the definition of our MSA, including Worcester County too, so that all four counties, Sussex, Somerset, Worcester, and Wycomico, are part of the Salisbury Metropolitan Statistical Area. Now, we just learned that after the 2020 census, there will now be a new CSA because Dorchester County has fallen into that same orbit. And I think what they did was they crested the 15% mark, which makes Dorchester County, the Cambridge micropolitan area, part of now the Salisbury CSA, which we can all guess that in a few years, at some point, Dorchester County is going to fall under our MSA. And my guess is, watching what's happened over the last few years with Accomack commuting, the same is going to be true there. I don't know when and if it will ever grow beyond that. I wouldn't expect it to, just given the economic gravity of the Baltimore-Washington area and Talbot County's closer linkage there. Dover being its own with Kent County, and Northampton County more likely to be commuting south. I think that's probably as big as it'll ever get. But that economy, those 4 counties, is $25 billion. It's been rising pretty rapidly since 2011. It sunk and has been rising pretty rapidly since. We are well past our former peak. The former peak from 2006 was at 21 billion, and we're now up to 25 billion. So we've recovered in terms of those numbers. That being said, obviously we've got things hitting us right now. When they show the breakdown, the Bureau of Economic Analysis shows the breakdown in the economy. It first does, farm and non-farm jobs, and farm and non-farm parts of the economy. Then government and private, public versus private jobs, and public versus private sector parts of the economy. And then under private sector, it has various categories. And for us, the largest category is the real estate finance insurance. So that's pretty broad. That's going to include, all real estate services, architecture, engineering, insurance, finance, banks, all of that. I'm pretty sure it does not include construction. Construction, I believe, is its own line. But if you were to combine the two, it'd be even more significant. And I could be wrong about that. I'll have to check. I don't want to say that definitively because I don't remember. But regardless, 10.5 billion of $25 billion, it's a huge, huge part of the Salisbury area economy.
Yeah, great answer, Jay. Thanks. We all know real estate is such a huge component of our economy here and really everywhere in the country. And it's not really being talked about a lot right now, which is for obvious reasons. Tenants such as restaurants, businesses, not just tenants, of course, restaurants own their own properties as well. They're kind of front and center for very good reason. We need to get them reopened, but kind of the trickle up effect is going to be those folks that are left holding real estate and those folks that are not receiving the rent that they're accustomed collecting, that are using that rent to then pay their mortgages. So that is yet to be seen on the effects of that. Hopefully we have some relief coming for that as well. But all just to point out that real estate is a huge part of our economy. One question coming, Jake, this is probably an easier answer when you probably get often. It is. So one of the challenges we experience is comments from developers and contractors about the sometimes slow turnaround and the ever-changing requirements coming from the Public Works, or formerly Public Works, now the Infrastructure and Development Department. Can you touch on that a little bit? So I think to kind of recap that question, do you have information possibly off the cuff? If not, you can get back to me with it. But the average review time from the Infrastructure and Development Department, and maybe a quick comment on the perceived ever-changing set of requirements.
Yeah, I would say that that perception is inaccurate, but I think every review is unique. Every project is unique. Since I've been on city council or mayor, the only changes to requirements that I'm aware of are the new, and I say new, it's been years now, but the last time the city adopted the International Construction Code, changes to that. And the same when the city adopted a critical areas section of our code. Those are the two major changes. And they paralleled what existed before. The critical area ones just put the city in the driver's seat so that we were controlling our own destiny, just as we had done with everything else. And then on the international, the ICC and the building code, again, we adopt virtually the entire thing just as it exists when they publish it. We make a few changes to that, but it's limited. So I can tell you that every other week, the Director of Infrastructure and Development reports to me and the city administrator in our meeting in front of their peers, our Result SBY meeting, on several metrics. One of the metrics, two of the metrics that she reports on, and I've been prone at this conference to sharing what the updated number is the average days to review a building permit and the average days to review a planning permit application. And we remain under 7 days and under 30 days as the average for both of those. And she is also required to 95% of the time ensure that 100% of those, ensure that all of those applications are under the average. So there's 5% that are allowed to not. I can't remember where she falls, but she's usually in like the 97.5 to 98% range of those applications coming in under that average. The last thing I'd say is this, is that for anyone who's concerned, the best thing to do, actually two things I need to say. First, just because it gets sent back to you in that time doesn't mean it's approved in that time. If regulations aren't met, or if the drawings are not correct, or if it doesn't calculate right and the building would fall down or the stormwater wouldn't function, it's not going to be approved. So sometimes it takes 3-4 reviews, which can be very frustrating, I think, for an owner, for a developer, for an engineer, for a planner, for an architect. No part of me feels like that shouldn't be frustrating. I understand that it is, but it's a process, and it's designed to ensure that not only public safety, but also that the law is upheld. But we want to make sure that people understand the process and that there's clarity and transparency. And I would direct people to salisbury.md, citizen services at the top, and then click on view public mapping. And you can see a map called development projects right there. And you can see exactly what stage everything in review is at in the city, whether it's proposed, in planning, in construction, or in permitting.
Yeah, Jake, I will throw in a personal experience and comment that I agree with your numbers and your feedback. And, a lot of people say, well, the facts are the facts. Well, people will dispute facts all the time. And especially in your world related to things like crime, you hear that a lot, but the numbers are the numbers. So in my personal experience, most recently, I've had a situation where people on one side of a transaction have been very much like the question that I received that I just asked you. They've been saying, oh my gosh, the city's taking forever. So I try to maintain a very positive relationship with Amanda and your whole team, and they've done a phenomenal job in the response time to me personally. And of course, they know that I represent developers and of the such. So I asked Amanda simply, could you send me an official timeline of when you received plans and then when you responded to those plans and sent them back? And she did. She pulled those notes and information. She sent it to me, I think in less than 24 hours, she got that information to me. And it was, I believe, I'm just going to call it between 4 and 6 different submittals that had taken place in this one particular project. Only one of them was beyond the 30 days. And that was like 32 days, and that was, or maybe 34 days. And that was because it was over the Christmas and New Year's holiday. So on one side, I hear a lot of complaints from the developers and the contractors that, hey, the city's taking a long time. But then when I have the facts in front of me, they really weren't taking a long time. Matter of fact, in every case except that one, which is a very obvious case where it was acceptable, or should have been, they beat the 30-day expected timeline. So I don't think you have to address that anymore. I know you could talk about that for a lot. Okay, you want to chime in? Okay, no problem.
Can I real quick?
The mayor and all, so I won't cut you off.
I appreciate that example, and I think that's helpful to hear. And just two thoughts. One, I think it's incumbent upon us to be transparent. And if I remember what it was like, working for Becker Morgan Group, when we would submit things to the city or the county or a different jurisdiction, that's the least fun time in a project. You're just waiting. There's nothing fulfilling about that moment. It's not like, oh, we're making progress. No, now we've done all the work. We're just waiting. Just get out of the way. I understand that feeling. I remember that sensation. And so that's why I would point to the second point, which is this: perception matters too. You brought up crime. I fully believe that the facts are important. It's great that, we didn't have a homicide for 23 months, for the longest stretch we've had in 30 years. We didn't have a single homicide in 2019. Crime was at its lowest rate in 2019. However, that doesn't mean everybody feels safer. That doesn't mean everybody believes that they're safer. And perception matters, and people make real decisions based on perception. So I want people to invest here. And if there's a feeling like, oh, I can't get what I need in time, or it's taking too long, that's going to affect reality. So while I have always internally, I use the phrase perception's perception, reality is reality. Perception is not reality, but it can influence things. I recognize that, and I want to ensure that we are doing more to respond to those concerns, and I will. So I'd encourage anybody to reach out to me directly with recommendations, ideas, anything we can do to help. I still think that there's value in things like lunch and learns, where the city and those in the development community are interacting and sharing ideas and recommendations, where we're talking about processes, but we're also listening, hey, we've seen it done better here and here, and this worked for us over here, or why can't we just do this or that? We want to be in a position of learning and improving too.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks for the additional comments there, Jake. We're going to go ahead and end the Q&A right now in the interest of everybody's time. A couple of things I'd like to kind of close with, and then I'll turn it back over to Brent, is first, Daniel, Delmarva Veteran Builders, Chris Eccleston, thanks so much for being a part of this, continuing to be a great community team member. Construction has not stopped. Daniel, if we had more time, I'd give you the stage for 30 minutes to talk about construction. Maybe that'll be another episode, but construction has not stopped. I've talked to them. They've been awarded just 2 phenomenally great projects on Delmarva here most recently, and those projects are moving forward. So great job, Daniel, and your team, and thank you again for that. Another thank you is Salisbury University. Even though we're not physically there present today, we are using their tech support team. So thank you, Mario and the Salisbury University team, for continuing to be a community partner for us and all the other folks that you help out. One other bit of information is we have this document, which is a community market report that we've created for the first time. We're going to continue that as a working document. Those went out in the mail yesterday to all those that pre-registered for this. You can just email any of us here or call us and ask to receive it. It's a community market report focused on commercial real estate across all of the counties on the Eastern Shore. So we're going to continue to put that valuable information out to the community, and we feel it's our responsibility to keep you guys up to date with what's going on in our markets. So Jake, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brent.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it. Thank you, Wes. A couple of sponsors. I need to thank them very much. M&T Bank, Delmarva Veteran Builders, Merrill, a Bank of America company, Hubbard Savings Bank, Insurance Market, Bank of Delmarva, Farm Credit, Avery Hall, TRS CPA Group, Paradise Energy Solutions, and W.R. McCain Associates. Without them, we would not be able to put this event on. Thank you very much. And also our committee members, Amy Miller, Rick Tillman, Wesley Cox, Tony Inslee, Steve Evans, Kelly Jeter, and Amber Bostwick. Without her and the entire team, we would not be here today. So our next meeting will be next Wednesday at 10 a.m. So I encourage you, if you haven't signed up already, please sign up for that. And I want to close with a quote from Chris Eccleston, our sponsor. He quotes, "When buffaloes are facing with an impeding storm, they put their heads down and charge directly through the storm to get through it quicker." So we all challenge you, every attendee, to be the buffalo. So thank you for your attendance. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.